Another major source of information and conditioning seems to be various forms of media that you and I deal with on a regular basis. Media can include radio, newspapers, magazines, and of course television, otherwise known as the legal narcotics, because sometimes we tend to watch too much television in a given day. But obviously for you and I today, the internet or social media seems to be a major force in our behaviors. Let us draw our attention to television, which is often used as babysitters, companions, and friends in most developed nations of the world, especially when we have to take care of work and take care of our children simultaneously. The reality is that the people I saw or did not see on television helped influence what I believed and valued. I would like to take you to a trip down memory lane with me. Most of us have watched television, and some of us watch too much television, but much of what we watch might be common. At least those who are my age may remember some of these. An average 18-year-old American is likely to have witnessed over 1 million commercials because of his or her habit of watching too much television. If you lived in the United States during the 1960s and 70s, then you probably watched some of the same television shows which I'm familiar with. Even if you didn't live at that time, because most of you are probably very young, you might have seen these television shows today on Nickelodeon. I'm going to name some of the TV shows I've watched, and many of which are still popular and can be seen on syndications. So think back with me here. Have you ever seen an episode of My Three Sons with Fred McMurray? How about Father Knows Best with Robert Young and Jane Wyatt? You remember seeing them recently? If you have not, you can still see them. And you cannot forget Happy Days with Richie and the Fonz. You certainly might have seen an episode of it, or you are certainly familiar with the actors. How about the Andy Griffith Show? Remember Andy, Opie, and even Aunt Bee? These were classic shows that kids and their family members watched night after night, week after week. And we cannot forget about Leave It to Beaver with Ward, June, Wally, and even the Beav. Would you agree that these television shows generally represented good family values to its audience? And most people tend to think so. Now picture little Behauwdien at an impressionable age of being 6 years old. As a boy, if you can imagine that, watching and enjoying these shows night after night, day after day, with my family members. What do you think I learned about the role of women in society that I lived in at that time by watching these shows? Remember in the 1960s and 1970s, American women were generally portrayed as staying at home, taking care of the family, cooking and cleaning. So it's not the Afghan background or upbringing, but also the American shows tended to reinforce the same roles in terms of gender. June Cleaver washed the dishes in high heels and pearls. Her husband made up all of the important decisions for the family. Perhaps Leave It to Beaver represented stereotypical middle class in the United States, and even the rest of the world. You know what that means. The husband worked, the wife stayed home, the 2.5 children, a dog, a white picket fence, and they all lived in the suburbs. Did our moms live that way? Perhaps not. However, most shows on television in the 60s portrayed African Americans as maids, as butlers, as servants, and other menial domestic roles. So one can ponder whether these shows represented what was real or the ideal in the minds of many citizens, writers, and directors of those shows. If I only see an African American employee from those television shows, what do I think about the role of African Americans in the workplace? Think back to how the Native Americans were portrayed in Hollywood movies. They were often portrayed as lawbreakers, savages, and even violent. What is my impression as a 6-year-old boy about the role of Native Americans in society? Another dimension of diversity is how foreigners were portrayed in the media, at least by Hollywood. Do you remember the I Love Lucy show with Lucille Ball and Daisy Arnaz, Lucy's husband? So his name was Ricky. He was a very successful Cuban band leader at a very popular nightclub. However, when Lucy caused him to get mad or angry, which was an average of 4 to 5 times every episode, he would yell at her in his native tongue, "Ay caramba!" You remember that? Now, what did that tell the 6-year-old child watching this show about Hispanics, about those who are from Latin background? Perhaps it communicated that you got to watch those Latinos. They've got hot tempers. Is it true that all Latinos or Hispanics have hot tempers? No, of course not. But remember, this 6-year-old boy is watching this day in and day out. And if that's the only impression of him about Latinos, he or she might remember that for a lifetime. I can say that media has influenced us very much and can give us the wrong image about individuals from various cultures. The main point here is that we got lots of good information and some misinformation from family members, from education, from our peers, even from media. The misinformation can become stereotypes or mental tapes which subconsciously drive our behavior toward people who are different from us. Furthermore, consistent reinforcements of misinformation and stereotypes can lead to discriminatory practices in the modern workplace while we're adult professionals and managers. As always, you should aim to be an inclusive professional manager and leader in your department, in your organization. Good luck.